Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of the textual study of the Quran. We will begin with verse 224 of Surah Baqarah. Let us read the translation and then we will discuss some of the important matters which are covered. The Arabic text first reads, وَلَا تَجْعَلُوا اللَّهَ أُرْضَةً لِأَيْمَانِكُمْ أَن تَبَرُّوا وَتَتَّقُوا وَتُصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم ولكن يؤاخذكم بما كسبت قلوبكم والله غفور حليم للذين يؤلون من نسائهم تربص 4 أشهر فإن فاءوا فإن الله غفور رحيم وإن عزموا الطلاق فإن الله سميع عليم. There are certain other issues regarding women as well, so educate yourselves on them also, and for your oaths, do not make the name of God an obstacle to deal kindly with others, to observe the limits of God, and to make peace among people. And be informed that God hears all and knows all. So you can see this parenthetical insertion, which is found in the translation of Ustaz Ghamidi, which is slightly a longish one. But the reason that this insertion is here is to connect the text with the previous section of verses. We know that previously the issue of menstrual cycle of women and intimacy with women in that menstrual cycle and the directives of menstruation were discussed. And once they were finished, because now these directives had laid the foundation of some more issues that could have been discussed, so they have been now taken up. So that is precisely why you can see Ustaz mentioning this parenthetical sentence by saying that educate yourselves on them. So there are certain other issues regarding women as well. So besides the ones that we've just discussed, formerly, of course, the issue of menstruation, some other issues that relate to this issue or to women are now brought up. And for this, there is this forward which is sort of presented. It's like the foreground to the issue which is coming up, and it tells us that you should not use the name of God in a way that you swear something which is wrong, and then when we'd like to put it right, you always ask yourself, well, because I've sworn that I'll do something, and I have to continue. So God says that, well, you don't use God's name in a way that you swear something and then you realize that is incorrect. In that case, you should break your oath actually and atone for it. And the grounds which are being laid are the grounds which we have just studied, and they are the grounds for a very specific Arab custom in those times, which is called Ilah. So before we discuss that, let me just complete the translation. It says that God will not hold you liable for oaths you swear inadvertently, but he shall definitely hold you accountable for oaths sworn with your heart's intent. And in reality, God is forgiving, very forbearing. Hence, those who swear to abstain from their wives have a respite of 4 months. Then if they change their mind, God indeed is forgiving, ever merciful. And if they decide to divorce, they should do so while fearing God, because God hears all and knows all. So the first thing which is mentioned before the Ilah directives are discussed is that you should only the oaths which are sworn advertently with intention, they are the ones regarding which people will be held accountable. Oaths which are sworn inadvertently, they will not be reason to be held accountable before the Almighty. Having said this, the real thing which is said here is that as far as Ilah is concerned, this is a Arabic term in the times of the Prophet, which was used to actually sever sexual relations with the wife. So it was like an oath that would be sworn, and that would mean that you have sworn that you will not have intimacy with your wives. Obviously, this is a very unbecoming and unseemly attitude by the husband. So the Quran has warned them that, well, if this is something that you have done, then you should come out of it, and the way to come out of it is to wait for 4 months. And as the Quran says that لِلَّذِينَ يُؤْلُونَ مِن نِسَائِهِمْ تَرْبَصُ 4 So those who want to abstain from their wives, they have a respite of 4 months, which means that in these 4 months they must decide. So they either should resume these relations, or as the verse says, if they don't want to, then they should divorce the wife, because they are in no position or in no don't have the authority to keep their wives in such a limbo and make them realize that, well, they are married to their husbands, but they cannot have this intimacy. So such an oath leaves the wife in an indefinite state, and as such is against virtue and piety. And therefore, the Almighty has fixed a period of 4 months after which the husband has to decide either to resume this marital relationship or to divorce her. And it is also evident from this directive that it is not allowed to sever intimacy, sexual intimacy with one's wife without a valid reason. And so much so, if a person swears such an oath, he must break it. Yes, he has to atone for it, but he must break it. These relations are the right of a wife. And if a husband does not fulfill them, then he can be regarded a criminal, both in the eyes of the law and before the Almighty in the hereafter. And in return, the wife also does not have the right to refuse compliance with these relations without a valid reason. And I'm sure you must have come across this narrative of the Prophet, which says that if the husband approaches the wife for sexual intimacy and she refuses the husband, then angels curse that wife till the coming of dawn, till the advent of dawn. This narrative also has a background that has to be understood in the light of these verses, that severing these ties deliberately without any reason is something which the Almighty does not want, whether it is the husband, as you can see from this verse, or if it is the wife, which you can see from the narrative which I just narrated before you. In both cases, without a valid reason, severing these ties, which form the crux and the basis of this relationship, is something which has to be done away with. If this is something that either of them would like to do, then it is better to come out of this bond of wedlock. Otherwise, it would be something that is not proper, especially when you are depriving the right of your spouse. والمطلقات يتربصن بأنفسهن ثلاثة قروء ولا يحل لهن أن يكتمن ما خلق الله في أرحامهن إن كن يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر وبعولتهن أحق بردهن في ذلك إن أرادوا إصلاحا ولهن مثل الذي عليهن بالمعروف وللرجال عليهن درجة. So now we come up to the directives of divorce. So remember, the previous verse has said that if you have decided to sever these marital ties with your wife, then you must divorce her, and it is not proper to keep her in this situation. So now the verses arise in which they said that if you have decided to divorce your wife, then what exactly is the procedure? So about that procedure, we are now being enlightened, and the Quran says that if the latter situation develops, divorced women must keep themselves waiting for 3 menstrual cycles. And it is unlawful for them, if they believe in God in the last day, to hide what God has created in their wombs. And if their husbands wish to reconcile, they have a greater right to take them back during this waiting period. And this is because there is no doubt that just as according to the norms, these women have obligations towards their husbands, they also have rights. Yet men as husbands have a degree of preference above women. This is the directive of God, and God is mighty, very wise. So you can clearly see that in these verses, husbands and of course wives are given directives. The first thing that you can see is that as far as divorce is concerned, the important thing which these verses tell us is that women must wait for 3 menstrual cycles. وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ, that women who have been divorced, they should wait for these 3 menstrual cycles. And the reason that they should wait for these 3 menstrual cycles is that that should determine that they are pregnant or not. Because if they have these 3 cycles, then it would definitely tell the society and the husband, of course, that they are not pregnant. However, if there is a cycle missed, or if through other reasons it can be ascertained that the wife is pregnant, then of course as far as the iddat period is concerned, as we know from other instances in the Quran, especially Surah Talaq, that the iddat will extend until childbirth. But the important thing here is that women should not hide their internal situation in this regard. And the important thing also is that as far as men are concerned, they must know that they have to divorce their wives whenever they need to divorce their wives. It has to be in the period of their purity, in which they haven't had any intimacy with their wives. And one thing that we'd like to note here is the use of the word quru. So quru basically is the plural of qar'un, and it means both the period of menstruation and also means the period of purity. So it's a word which has both meanings and had opposite meanings, because generally, because every period of purity is followed by a period of menstruation. So it's like one following the other, and therefore both meanings of this word exist. However, Ustaz Ghamidi and his predecessor, Ustaz Amin Islahi, have preferred that the word qar should be interpreted as menstruation. It could have been interpreted as period of purity as well. But since the issue is to find out whether a lady is pregnant or not, and for that, it's the period of menstruation which tells us, because as soon as a woman menstruates, we would know definitely that she's not pregnant. So therefore, they understand this word to mean menstruation. And hence it is said that they should wait for 3 menstrual cycles. And of course, وَبَعُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ إِنْ أَرَادُوا إِصْلَاحًا, as the Quran says, that in this waiting period, if husbands want, they can return, they can ask for their wives to come back to them, they can revoke their decision, and the wife would be with them, of course, as a result. But if the period expires, then the two will stand legally separated. And also, as you can clearly see, the fact is that in this regard, the beauty of these Quranic verses is that they end on a very, very precautionary note, and a very, very important note, and that is وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. That is, that just as according to the norms, these women have obligations towards their husbands, they also have rights. So you see, the important thing that we have to understand here is that divorce and the pre-divorce scenario, in which marriage, of course, is something which is going along, both these periods of life, they have rights and obligations. As married couples, both have rights and obligations, and if they decide to call it a day, if they are to attend end this relationship, then of course again the rights and obligations of both have to be kept in mind. But the Quran has made this point here, وَبَعُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ. Of course, the fact that the husband can return the wife in this iddat period, because he's the head of the family. And also he says that لِرِجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ, that husbands have a degree of authority or superiority over women. It's not a general statement here. It's like saying that because of the fact that they have been regarded as the head of the family, so here they have to be also accorded this status, and therefore, being the head of the family, they are the ones who are given this authority to untie the knot of marriage as well. And we will study this verse in a couple of, it's just a verse which is down the surah, which says that بِيَدِهِ أُقْتَةُ النِّكَاحِ, which tells us that the husband has tied the knot, and now it is in his hands to untie the knot as well, meaning that divorce has to be initiated by the husband, whether he himself intends to divorce or whether the wife asks divorce. In both cases, both have an equal right to divorce, of course, but the initiation of divorce will take place from the husband. And therefore, these words لِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ, they tell us that men as husbands have a degree of superiority, and this superiority, of course, is not in any way to be understood by way of superiority of gender. That is not the case. It's just a superiority mentioned here vis-a-vis the responsibility. So certain responsibilities which husbands have, and in particular, since divorce is being discussed here, they are being told, and society is being told, that as husbands, they have the right to give divorce. And if a wife asks divorce from the husband, and he was also, if there is no reconciliation possible, then he is liable to give it. And the final words are Wallahu Azizun Hakim, that this is the directive of God, and you have to follow this directive because God is mighty and wise. And it says, الطلاق مرتان فإمساكم بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان ولا يحل لكم أن تأخذوا مما آتيتموهن شيئا إلا أن يخافا ألا يقيما حدود الله فإن خفتم ألا يقيما حدود الله فلا جناح عليهما فيما افتدت به تلك حدود الله فلا تعتدوها ومن يتعدى حدود الله فأولئك هم الظالمون. This divorce can be pronounced twice during the period of a marriage. After this, retention should be with honor or sending off with kindness. And if the decision is to send off, it is unlawful for you to take back from them at this instance anything you have given these women, unless both of them fear that they may not be able to keep within the bounds set by God, then if you people also feel that they will not be able to remain within the bounds set by God, then there shall be no offense for either of them regarding the things given by the husband, if the wife seeks divorce by returning them to him in ransom. These are the bounds set by God, so do not transgress them. And you should know that those who transgress the bounds of God are in fact the unjust. So this is a very important section of the Quran which actually describes the nature of this divorce. It tells us that once one divorce is sufficient, one pronouncement of divorce is sufficient. However, such a divorce in which you are authorized to take your wife back or revoke that divorce within the iddat period, the Quran says, "At-talaqu marratan." You have this opportunity twice only. So if in your life the situation arises that you divorce your wife and you take her back within the iddat period, before the iddat period expires, then this would be one instance. And this can happen a second time also if in future this instance arises that there is a difference of opinion, or there is a deadlock and the husband thinks that the wife has to separate, or the wife thinks that she has to separate. Whatever the case, if the husband gives the divorce a second time, then he has one more chance of revoking it and taking back the wife within the iddat period. However, if this happens for the third time, then he cannot take her back, and that is something which we will discuss in the next verse, which is coming up. But before we go to that verse, let's see what these verses that we have just studied, they tell us. The first thing that they tell us is that it is absolutely not lawful for the husband at this time of divorce to take back any gifts or the dower or anything that he has gifted to his wife, which normally is the case in many marriages, that when, especially when the wife seeks divorce, then she is obligated, or it is made mandatory upon her to return the gifts that she has taken from her husband, or even the meher amount. So the Quran is absolutely clear here that whether it is the husband who is seeking divorce or giving divorce, or whether it's the wife who is seeking divorce and therefore on account of that the husband is divorcing her, in these normal circumstances, so to speak, it is not valid at all to take back the dower amount, the meher amount. Remember, this meher is something that we've discussed, has to be paid at the time of marriage. It is a token of the fact that the husband has taken the authority of financially supporting the wife. So it's in the fitness of things that it should be given at the time of marriage. On most occasions, it is not. But as I said, this is what the Quran says. The spirit of marriage is it should be given at the time of marriage. So that is what is meher all about. And also, not only that, but also any gifts that he has given the wife during that period of marriage are also this not valid for him to take them back. And if this is not valid for him to take them back, then also it has to be understood that if you do this, this would be something which is against the dictates of the Quran. But the Quran gives one exception here, which we can see that I just read out, and that is that if the husband wants to divorce and the wife also wants to get that divorce, I mean, both mutually agree that divorce is the only option, and they would be going for that. But the husband is not divorcing his wife simply because he has gifted such large amounts of property or wealth or assets to her that he thinks that if he divorces his wife, he will lose these assets because he has gifted them to his wife and now they are in his name. So on such occasions, the Quran says that if the wife, in order to appease her husband, she gives back some of the gifts which were in the first place not allowed for the husband to take back, because this is not what the Quran says, but only in this exceptional situation when both of them would like to separate. But the only reason for the husband not going forward with the divorce is that he has gifted a lot of assets to his wife. So in such a case, if the wife forgoes those assets, and as the Quran says, by returning them, the words are فَلَا جُنَاهَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِي مَفْتَدَتْ بِهِ, which means that there is no offense on them if the wife returns these gifts as ransom. So it's like a ransom that is called by the Quran. So in such a case, a wife, if she returns her gifts, that is fine. But as is generally the case, that in most countries, or in most third world countries at least, we know that whenever a wife seeks divorce, it is erroneously thought that she has to return every single amount that was given to her. Even the dower is to be returned, which is absolutely not the case. So neither the dower nor the gifts have to be returned. The only exception here is that if the divorce is not taking place because of the gifts that the husband has given her, then she can give back, and it's okay for the husband to accept. And there's, of course, one more instance or one more exception to this, which is in Surah Nisa, and that is if the wife is guilty of any sexual misconduct. In that case, if she has, as the Quran says, fahishat mubayyana, if she has committed adultery or of things of that sort, then of course the gifts that have been given to her can also be taken back. Except for these two situations, absolutely there's no question of any dower or gift that was given to the wife to be taken back at this instance of divorce. Now we go on to the next verse, which will actually tell us that what will happen if this divorce is given the third time. Remember, the two divorces or the two instances in the lifetime of a person could have arisen in which he can take back his wife within the iddah period. However, if the iddah period expires, now they are two independent human beings, men and women. They are free to marry. They can choose one another once again. They can remarry, or they can choose someone else. So now they are like free individuals. But within the iddah period, this opportunity of taking back the wife by the husband or given to the husband is only twice. It's just a two-time opportunity. So now the Quran is telling us what will happen if he divorces his wife for the third time. So now he cannot take back his wife within the iddah period. But if they want to marry, then this is something that they have to, there's a procedure laid out which they must follow. And this procedure is now outlined by the very next verse. It says, فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ مِن بَعْدُ حَتَّى تَنْكِحَ زَوْجًا غَيْرَهُ فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا أَن يَتَرَاجَعَا إِن زَنَّا أَن يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ وَتِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ يُبَيِّنُهَا لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. Then if a husband, after revoking divorce twice in the same marriage bond, divorces his wife for the third time, she will not be lawful to him now unless she weds a husband other than him. But if the second husband also divorces her, it shall be no offense for the first husband and wife to return to each other if they think that they can now keep within the limits set by God. Such are the bounds prescribed by God, which he is making plain to those who want to gain knowledge. So you can clearly see what the Quran is telling us here is if this situation arises for the third time, that the husband has now divorced his wife for the third time because of any reason, any valid reason, then he cannot take back his wife within the period, as was the case with the previous two instances of divorce. Now there is a whole procedure laid out, and that is that woman will now marry someone else. And then after naturally arisen circumstances, if that husband too divorces that wife, now she is allowed or lawful for the first husband and not for anything less. And the reason that this whole procedure, as you can see, has been laid down is that divorce should not become a mere child play. And every time you divorce your wife and you take her back in the period, and then you start doing it again and again. So you just have these two opportunities. On the third instance, then there is this big gulf that has been created by God, that now if you want to remarry, the situation will only be possible if that wife marries someone else, not out of any planned strategy, which we often see in our own countries, that there's a planned marriage which takes place, and what we call as halala, in which there is a planned arrangement between some other husband who marries that woman for a night and then has intimacy with her, because that's another thing which our jurists think that is essential. And then there is a bond which there is like a covenant or a promise from that husband who is there for just one night, that he will divorce the lady or the wife in the morning, and then she becomes legalized for the first husband. So this subterfuge, this is something which is very shameful, which goes along in the name of religion, and which is absolutely a disgrace, I would say. It's shameful to the name of religion. So the Quran is absolutely clear that there should be no such planned activity. It has to be a naturally driven circumstance that must arise, that if she marries someone else and then out of naturally arisen circumstances he divorces her, only then she can marry the first husband. The issue of halala has been discussed elsewhere by me. We are also studying the social sharia in parallel, so we've just discussed that as well last week, and we have seen that how a certain narrative has led to this understanding that that if the lady marries her husband, the second husband, and she would like to come back to the first husband, then it is essential that she should have her marriage consummated. And this is also planned, and precisely this is what we call halala. And we have also discussed how absolutely baseless, and it has no foundation in the Quran. It has been erroneously understood, and that hadith has become the reason of that understanding. Whereas I have discussed that how this hadith is actually talking about something which is the entire opposite of what has generally been understood. So now, before we go on to the next part, the directives of divorce are still continuing in the next verses, but because of the fact that they have reached a certain point here in which we can now discuss anything that you'd like to know regarding the procedure of divorce, regarding the iddat issue, and regarding what will happen once the divorce is also given. So please raise your questions if you have them.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Our first question asks, is there a reason why the husband is forbidden to approach his wife after he did talaq and put her into iddah since she is still his wife?
So the reason is that, of course, if he consummates the marriage, or he goes to her, then that would automatically mean that he has taken her back. So he can do that, but that would amount to revoking his divorce.
Thank you,
So
Dr.
yes, the Quran tells us that they have to live in the same house, as we've studied that. But if living in the same house results in that intimacy, then the divorce that he has given her would be revoked, and they will live again as husband and wife. So this is like an expression of revocation.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Saleem. Imran, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Thank you very much for the explanation. Just a quick question about, during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he changed the rule because people were abusing it, like you mentioned. So he made it like 3 talaq means 3, even if you give it at once. So my first part of my question is, why the subsequent khulafa or the leaders not revoke that ruling of his? Especially in this day and age, people are very impulsive and they just say 3 talaq at once, and which is not based according to the Quran or the Prophet's hadith. That's first question. And the second is that temporary marriage, like misyar or muta, which is used, quite wrongly. Your thoughts on that, if you may, please. Thank you very much.
As far as the directive of Umar who is concerned, he was a powerful and towering personality. And when he gave this administrative directive, it was, of course, adopted at the state level. And it seems that in the first couple of centuries, there became this consensus by all the famous 4 Imams of the Muslims, Abu Hanifa, Shafi, Malik, and Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal. All of them, they agreed that yes, once these 3 talaqs are announced, they are pronounced in one go, they shall be implemented. Whereas we very well know that Umar actually did so in order to warn people that they are misusing this. They would pronounce 3 divorces, and then they would say that, well, I did not intend to give 3 divorces, and I just intended 1. So they were making fun of this directive. So basically, Umar said that, well, nothing doing now. I'm going to implement whatever you're going to say. So unfortunately, this administrative decision was not interpreted in the way that it should have been interpreted, and because in the first few centuries there took place this consensus between the 4 imams that this continued, and it was only in the 7th century, in fact in the later part of the 7th century, when Ibn Taymiyyah, he actually challenged this contention. He said that, well, this is not the correct import, and as far as these 3 divorces are concerned, they shall be considered as one, because basically they are deviations of the law itself. So it was him who actually, for the first time in so many centuries, said that, well, this is not the purport of the Quran, it is the understanding of and that too, not an understanding, it's basically an administrative directive. And this administrative directive should not continue in time, especially when people become ignorant of the whole methodology of divorce, and also when they are not in a position to to give it in the right way. So, I mean, this is a matter of history and it has happened. So we just cannot change it. But as I said, there was the reason for this continuing for such a long period was because the first four imams, first four imams, they virtually agreed. I mean, they seldom agree on all four. I mean, on something together. But this is one area in which they said that, well, if the divorce is given thrice in one go, then it shall be implemented as taken as final. As far as your second question is concerned, misyar and muta. So muta is basically nothing less than prostitution. I mean, it's just a way of personal pleasure that has been, I mean, adopted by a certain section of people. It has absolutely no basis in the Quran or any authentic narrative of the Prophet. It was a practice which originated in pre-Islamic Arabia, and it was immediately proscribed in the Meccan period, when the Quran says that the only way that you can have sexual relations with someone is either if she's your wife, or if she, in those periods, because slave women were there, or if she's your slave women. Other than that, you cannot have any sexual relations. This is as far as muta is concerned. But misyar is something which is totally different. It is not a temporary marriage. It is also not for pleasure. It is a marriage in which the wife forgoes her rights and says that, well, I am not going to charge you, or I'm not going to hold you responsible for supporting me financially, which is your responsibility as a husband. I have enough of my own. All that I need is companionship. So I forgo this right that your obligation to me, that you support me. I'm going to support myself, and so therefore, if you just provide me with your companionship, that is fine with me. So this is like a situation in which certain rights are in this way forsaken by the wife herself, and this does take place in the world. And the reason for that, of course, is understandable, that many a time women who are maybe very wealthy, or maybe they are very talented, or there could be other reasons, they don't find a suitable match, and they, as a result, settle for this compromise that they either become a second wife of a person and don't put any obligation on him, or, as I said, even if they are not second wives, they are first wives, first wife of someone, they would just say that, well, we just want this companionship and we would not like you to support us. So that is what is misyar, and that is perfectly okay, I think. And in a lot of situations, it's a solution to a problem. But muta, as I said, is something which is absolutely proscribed, prohibited. And very earlier on in Surah Ma'arij and Surah Mu'minun, which we know are all Meccan surahs, it has been said that any sexual relationship with the wife can only be through marriage, or, as I said, in the case of the Arabia of those times, just with slave women. But as far as I mean, today is concerned, because there is no issue of slavery left, so therefore sexual relations can only take place with the wife, and as I said, they have to be through the agency of nikah. And that is why we find that in our pre-Islamic times, there are two separate terms for women who would indulge in muta. I mean, so the women who would be who would take place. I mean, if any union would take place because of muta, then that person or that woman would be called a mamtua. So mamtua is a woman from whom this muta has taken place. But on the contrary, women with whom nikah would take place were called mankuha. So mamtua and mankuha. So the only possible legitimate relationship with someone, with a woman, is through nikah, and your wife would be called a mankuha. Mamtua is something which is absolutely prohibited.
Thank you very much. Dr. Shehzad, you mentioned that most of the rights that the men have in the family are because they are the provider, like ar-rajalu qawwamun 'ala nisa, but also we read it today, they have the right to divorce and their right to take back and all these things, because they are the provider in the Islamic law. But if a wife, due to whatever reasons, whether she needs a husband, or she is, like you said, is self-sufficient, if she is able to take care of everything, then the question arises, then the husband still carry the same authority that Islamic law provides him.
Yes, he does, because you see, this is not just one reason because of which he has been accorded this authority. It's not just because of financial obligation that have been imposed on him. So the Quran actually spells out two reasons for this position of head of the family being accorded to the husband. It says, "Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala nisa." Men have been made head of the family, guardians of women. Bima faddalallahu ba'dahum 'ala ba'd, because they are more blessed or more superior to them in this respect, to take this position as the head of the family. بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ, because in this particular area, to take a decision and to be a person who can drive a family or conduct a family, men generally, so not, of course there are exceptions, men are more suitable for this task. This is one reason. And the other one is وَبِمَا أَنْفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, because they are financially liable for their wives. So it's not just financial liability which makes them or which gives them this authority. It is being suitable for this job as well, psychologically, physiologically, and you can say as a male gender. So these are two reasons. However, having said that, I mean, if there is an agreement in which a wife would like to say this, that, well, I mean, you end up with a separate agreement between a husband and wife, and you say that, well, in such a case, divorce, the right of divorce will be given to me. The wife says that whenever I would like divorce to happen, you shall not refuse. That is absolutely fine, and I think that is what today is also the need of the hour. That if women would like to seek divorce for any reason, they should still follow the proper procedure. They would ask the husband to give that divorce, and the husband should not dilly-dally in any case or in any way. Yes, there could be some reconciliation time given, like for example, a couple of months. But if after this reconciliation time, there's no possibility of any reconciliation, then on the demand of the wife, the husband is bound to give that divorce. So I think if this procedure is followed, which is in the fitness of things, in the fitness of the spirit of religion, the wife will have an equal opportunity to get divorce, and the husband will only be the initiator of divorce. That is the only thing.
I see. My apologies, but thank you very much for explanation. You must have read that Abdullah bin Masud could not afford to pay for his wife and the family, but the wife was wealthy, so Prophet ﷺ allowed her to give her the zakat money to Abdullah bin Masud. So, and then he was, she asked Prophet ﷺ, can I give the zakat money to my husband, because he's responsible for paying for the family, and because he's poor, he doesn't spend enough money. And how would that play into the role of the women who are self-sufficient then?
I think we have to understand that such incidents cannot be made basis of law in any way. You see, these are situational incidents in which certain situations arise, and the Prophet gives directives on account of the circumstances of that companion. In no way can such incidents become an example for making a law. They are not a precedence. The precedence has to be the Quran itself and the ruling of the Prophet. So anything which is related to an individual happening, it cannot be made the basis of an incident. Yes, we could seek some guidance from it, and that also should only be the case when we have all the details of what has happened. And if there is anything that can be beneficial, we can derive that guidance. But merely that particular instance cannot be made any basis of law.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you very much.
Speaking of misyar, Dr. Saleem, we have another question that asks, is that kind of marriage allowed in Pakistan or in any of the other Islamic countries today?
I don't think it is found here in Pakistan, but I do know in certain Middle Eastern countries, or I think there is this practice allowed in Egypt and some parts of some other countries. But that is a search that you can just do on the internet and find out wherever that misyar is available. And even if it is not there, I mean, it's just something that it is an agreement which is between the husband and the wife. So it's like a normal nikah. I mean, this is something which people need to get educated on by themselves, that whether there is this law or not, you don't need a law actually, because it's like a normal nikah. It's just like a normal nikah. The only difference is that on such an occasion, the husband is not going to support this wife. So it's like an agreement which is a personal agreement made between the husband and wife. So if that agreement is it goes forth soundly between the two, it's absolutely fine, because basically nothing has changed. I mean, the rights are the same. The only thing is that now the wife is not demanding any amount for her support. So that is, I mean, because the nikah is to be registered in the normal way, because it is to be something which is to be conducted in the same way. So there is no need for a separate law for that, in my opinion.
So, on the same topic, I think there's some confusion in the chat, because another question is asking, how is that different from being in a live-in relationship? What happens to the psychological and educational upbringing of children in this kind of marriage if the husband is not taking the financial responsibility of his wife?
So you see, this is a compromise situation, remember, and this is not an ideal situation. It's like a compromise, And this is particularly for women. I mean, this is for the benefit of women. Which I just gave you an example that at times women, they are not able to find suitable matches because either they are extremely talented or they are very well educated and they don't find a match for them, or it could be any other reason in which they have passed their marriageable age. So they would like to marry, but they at times they would not find a spouse who would be able to support them. So ideally they should find someone who would be able to support them. So when they don't find such an instance, all this law does is that it gives them this right that, well, if you can find someone who is not able to support you, but he is still able to give you companionship, then okay, that is fine. So that's just giving up your right, giving up a certain right that you enjoy. So it's not an ideal thing. It's like a compromise situation. So what the wife would be thinking at that time is that at least I'm getting companionship from someone. At least I have that psychological sense of protection. I can live with that person, even if I am not going to spend from whatever he gives me because of reasons I just stated. So I think that it's like a second best option. It's not an ideal thing.
Thank you for that, Dr. Saleem. What about the children in the marriage?
The children are the children, the way they are. I mean, they have the same rights. There's nothing going to change. So yes, this could play down a little badly on their psyche when they know that their father is not supporting them. But I think they have to prepare their children for this purpose. I mean, for this whole scenario, they can tell. I mean, the wife can tell or the mother, to be exact. She can tell her children that, well, this is how we have married, and I have taken the responsibility. And so therefore, your father is not to blame because I never asked from him, and he's someone who is also not able to do so. So it's like preparing your children for this. And I think if they are properly prepared, they are mentally told that this is how things are. So as I said, it's like a second best option. It's not an ideal thing. So this is something that might still affect their psyche. But I think that considering the fact that this is something which is not an ideal thing, and it's a second option, I think we have to realize that it will have certain shortcomings which would not be overcome. But then, as I said, if you educate your children in the right way, it might work.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Bismillah, Tirmizi Ahmed, please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Saleem. So my question is in continuing with the question that your last caller asked, the last one. What about in the instance of khula? So at the time of the nikah, if the girl has they take off that the girl has the right to divorce, then she can't take it. The husband has to allow it. How does that play out?
So I just explained that earlier on, that the initiation of divorce will always be from the husband. If the wife seeks divorce, she has an equal right to divorce. The only thing is that she will ask her husband to divorce her. And the husband, of course, can be given time for reconciliation or anything that he might like to do in order to mend the things that have broken. But if that doesn't happen, then he would be bound to give divorce because the wife has an equal prerogative to seek divorce. I mean, both have an equal right to divorce. The only difference is the procedure. A husband, when he would like to divorce, he can pronounce divorce. A wife, when she would like divorce, she would demand divorce. In both cases, the initiation would be from the husband, but the husband cannot dilly-dally or delay matters if the wife would like divorce. Yes, there are certain laws in certain countries which actually are humiliating at times for the wife. But if you look at the Quran, and the spirit of the Quran is that if the wife would like divorce, she can have that divorce. The only thing is that it has to be initiated from the husband.
So I do know of people who the girl asked and the guy refused, and then it had to go to the court.
Yes,
so basically,
in that
it can
case,
be delayed.
Yes, in that case, then the marriage bond will be annulled by the court, and in Arabic we call it tansikh nikah, which means that now it will be mansukh or it will be abrogated by the court. So if the husband is not willing to come forward, which is a shame and a pity, then the court will step in and just cancel the nikah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Another question asks, are there any evidences on kinaya, or a man telling his wife that he loves her, but he has the niyyah of talaq?
I'm sorry, I could not understand or hear the question properly. Could you please repeat it?
It says, are there any evidences on kinaya, or a man telling his wife? Yes. Or a man telling his wife that he loves her, but has the niyyah of talaq?
I'm not sure if I could get the question. Is the person asking that that he would like the divorce? He would like to give that divorce, but his love for his wife is stopping him, or what exactly is the meaning of the question?
Rather, he's saying that a man telling his wife that he loves her, but in his head, he subconsciously or he consciously wants to divorce her. I'm not sure what kinaya is, so I can't comment on that.
I mean, this is something which this could be a psychological situation that which a person might be facing, and I think he should not succumb to these psychological suggestions. If he loves her, he loves her. Whatever might come in his mind, that is something of it could be a hallucination, it could be a bad thought which can come to any person. You should just ignore it.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Shabnam, please go ahead.
थैंक यू सर थैंक यू मरियम सर ये जो अभी हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं कि राइट ऑफ डिवोर्स एट द टाइम ऑफ निकाह एग्रीमेंट हो सकता है और हस्बैंड वाइफ इक्वल राइट होंगे और हस्बैंड को देनी होगी सर अदरवाइज भी इसमें और नॉर्मल अदरवाइज भी ये इस्लाम ये राइट तो देता है वाइफ को कि अगर वो उसके साथ नहीं रहना चाहती तो उसके पास कोई भी रीजन ना हो इवन इफ शी जस्ट डिसलाइक्स हिम हिज फेस हिज लुक्स तो वो he will have to give her divorce. तो सर इसमें और उसमें क्या फर्क है दोनों में?
There is no difference. I mean, the only difference is in the procedure. So I mean, the wife cannot pronounce divorce the way a husband can. So she will ask the husband to divorce her. So the only difference is in the procedure. Otherwise, both have an equal right.
नो सर मैं इन दोनों का डिफरेंस पूछ रही हूँ कि कोई एग्रीमेंट नहीं हुआ बस नॉर्मल शादी हो गई कि जो हस्बैंड का राइट है और wife can ask
Well,
for
this is because in order to protect the rights of the wife, because you see different countries have different laws, and at times these laws are not conducive to the rights of both spouses. So I think it's like a protection which is given to the wife, that she will not be left indefinitely in any refusal from the husband, because if she demands divorce and the husband doesn't give her divorce, so there are certain countries in which laws are such in which this procedure can be really it can really go to great lengths, and for months and years she might need to wait. So this is like protecting the wife or the lady, that well, if she asks for that divorce, then there should be a period, like for example 3 months or 2 months or 4 months, in which reconciliation should be they should try for reconciliation. But if that doesn't happen, then the husband cannot delay matters any longer. He must take that step.
So this will be written in the agreement and not made a law.
You can make it a part of the marriage nikah nama, and you can just have that written.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Amir, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you?
Walaikum salam.
Okay, yes. So I was asking, like, as far as, because I've heard through like some fiqh studies that if a man was to tell his wife any kind word, not just that he loves her, but any kind word at all, but in his heart he's actually, like wanting to divorce her, that this would also count as a divorce. So I was asking, is there anything
No, I think this is just overstretching your mind. If he would like to divorce her, he should divorce her the proper way is. So any intention that he has in his heart has nothing to do with this. I mean, it is to be ignored totally. So I mean, if he would like to divorce her, what's stopping him from taking the name of divorce and giving that divorce to her?
Yeah.
And if he's not giving it, I mean, it only means that he is having those thoughts which should just be ignored.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all the questions for now.
Okay, now let's move ahead. وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَبَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ سَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَمَا أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ يَعِظُكُمْ بِهِ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. And when you divorce women and they reach the end of their waiting period, either retain them with kindness or let them go with kindness, and never retain them with the intention of harming them, so that in this manner you commit excesses against them. And you should know that whoever does this will only be unjust to his own soul. And do not make a mockery of God's revelations, and bear in mind the favors he has bestowed upon you, and bear in mind the law and the wisdom which he has revealed to you, of which he instructs you, and remain faithful to God, and know full well that he has knowledge of all things. So these are some supplementary directives which are given after the divorce, this post-divorce scenario. And it is said that once this waiting period ends, you should allow your wife to go, and you should not in any way cause any hindrance. And as the Quran says, "La tumsikuhunna ziraran lita'tadu." If you're just going to stop her from going, which means that you're going to take back that divorce within the iddat period, it should not be to in any way harass her or to harm her in any way or to mentally torture her, but the reason should be a valid reason. And if you would like to let her go, then of course it should be with kindness, which would mean that it should be an amicable settlement. And in that case, as we will see near the end of these verses, the Quran says that you must give some amount to your wives at this time of departure, because remember, they would be left at times high and dry, they might not have any resources. So the Quran says, "Mata'am bil ma'ruf," give them something according to the convention of the society. And as per this verse, even a law can be enacted that if women are divorced in such a way and they have no other means and resources, and they are also not getting married to anyone soon, then for a particular period of time they would be supported by their ex-husband, so that they can maintain a living. So the Quran is absolutely firm here, and it says that you should not make fun of the law of God, because the law of God has this spirit and this essence inlaid in it, that when you're divorcing your wives, you should be doing it in a very friendly and amicable way. Yes, it's a very difficult thing to do. Parting is sweet sorrow, as the poet has said. But then, of course, at times this is the only solution to things. So you should make it as sweet as possible, as amicable as possible, so that the children, whose issue is also coming up in some of the preceding verses, succeeding verses, they are in a position to still have that relationship with their estranged father and mother, and in no way they are stopped from meeting either of these two. And the Quran has said that وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَمَا أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, that bear in mind the law and the wisdom which he has revealed to you, of which he instructs you, and remain faithful to God, and know full well that he has knowledge of all things. That these are the things that have to be at all costs taken into account. People must remember that this law, which is, of course, as the Quran says, أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, it's this wisdom and the philosophy of law and the Sharia that has been revealed to you for their own betterment. And if this betterment is something that they realize, then they will not use this to their own advantage in a bad way. They will not find subterfuges. They will not find scapegoats. They will not in any way conduct this very important and a very sensitive issue in a way that it makes a mockery of the essence of this directive in any form. And also, we have to understand that as far as the Quran is concerned, the Quran does not want people to remain in wedlock if they think that they just cannot pull along. This is an option which is given to both husband and wife. Yes, they should exercise it with care, with caution, because especially when the family has come into being, when they have children, it's not easy. It's not going to be easy for the children. Neither is going to be easy for the two who are now deciding to separate. So it has to be done when you have no other option, and when you think that you will not be able to maintain that relationship. And also, people must be practical and also think that, well, idealism is not the place for this world. You might think that your spouse has certain shortcomings, and you might find some other spouse in her place. But remember, if that particular shortcoming is not found in some other spouse, then some other shortcoming might still be there. So because of the fact we as human beings, we will have our shortcomings come what may. So it's always better to adjust. Only when this adjustment seems a remote possibility, or let me say that, an impossibility, only then should this step be taken. So the next verse also sounds another caution, and that is وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَبَلَغْنَ أجلهن فلا تعذلوهن أن ينكحن أزواجهن إذا تراضوا بينهم بالمعروف ذلك يوعظ به من كان منكم يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر ذلكم أزكى لكم وأطهر والله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون. And when you divorce women and they complete their waiting period, do not hinder them now from marrying their future husbands when they agree to deal with one another mutually according to the norms. These words of advice are given to those of you who believe in God and in the last day. This only is more decent and a purer way for you, and in reality, God knows and you do not. So you see, once again, a caution is sounded that once your wife is legally separated from you, the divorce has been done, the iddat has finished and expired, now she's a free soul, she can marry anyone. But if she decides to marry, your honor or your overblown honor, let me say, should not in any way stop that wife from marrying any future husband. That would be something which is really, really a problem that may arise because of that male ego that people might have. But the Quran says, "The فَلَا تَعْدُلُوهُنَّ يَنْكِحْنَ أَزْوَاجَهُنَّ." So do not cause any hindrance if they would like to marry again. So you see, this was something which was rampant in the Arab society, and it is still rampant in many, I would say, feudal societies, in which a husband, when he divorces his wife, he would like that wife not to marry anyone, because he thinks that, well, if she's married me and now she's separated from me, she should not marry anyone else. The Quran says this is absolutely unfair. You don't have this right. If she would like to marry, you cannot stop her, because she's a free soul once you have divorced her, and you should not take this pretext that because she was my wife, now she cannot marry any other person. So the Quran has taken exception to this, and today also we have to learn this lesson, that if we are now not in a position to remain together as husband and wife, and if the two are separating legally, then in no way should our ego step in and stop the wife from marrying someone else. And the Quran is absolutely clear here. And the Quran has said that Zalikum azkalakum wa athar, that these words of advice which are being given to you, they are given to you because they are azkalakum wa athar. They are for your own purification, your inner purification. Remember, every directive of religion, the purpose of every directive is this inner purification. And the Quran has stated this in very, very, very assertive terms, that Zalikum azkala, that this is something which is more decent for you and something which is more purer for you. And if at this instance you are not realizing the wrong that you are doing, then bear in mind, Wallahu ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun, that God knows and you do not know. So make a note of this. So next we are coming up to the directives which relate to the infants, which are of course as a result would be affected by the divorce. So in that case, especially infants which are being breastfed by the wife, what exactly are going to be their directives? So we are just going to see them now, and that is والوالدات يرضعن أولادهن حولين كاملين لمن أراد أن يتم الرضاعة وعلى مولود له رزقهن وكسوتهن بالمعروف لا تكلف نفس إلا وسعها لا تضار والدة بولدها ولا مولود له بولده وعلى الوارث مثل ذلك فإن أراد فصالا عن تراض منهما وتشاور فلا جناح عليهما وإن أردتم أن تسترضعوا أولادكم فلا جناح عليكم إذا سلمتم ما آتيتم بالمعروف واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله بما تعملون بصير. And after divorce also, mothers shall suckle their offspring for 2 years, for those who desire to complete the term. And the child's father in such a case will have to bear the cost of their food and clothing according to the norms. No one should be burdened beyond his means. Neither should a mother be harmed because of her child, nor a father because of his child. And his heir shall be responsible in the same way. Then, if they both decide on weaning by mutual consent and consultation, there is no blame on both. And if you decide to engage someone else to suckle your offspring, there is no blame on you, provided you pay the mother what you promised her in accordance with the norms. And remain faithful to God, and bear in mind that God is seeing what you do. So these are the directives that you can see have come up because of the fact that if the divorce is given in a situation that the mother is suckling a child, And now that the father has divorced her, what are the rights of the wife, and how is the child going to be treated in this way? So we have to understand that it is the responsibility of the divorced wife or the divorced lady to suckle her offspring for 2 years, as this verse says, in case the husband wants her to complete the total suckling period. So the suckling period is basically 2 years. So they can settle for less than that, but if the husband wants that 2-year term should be completed, then the wife should comply. Now, during this period, it is the responsibility of the father, as these verses say, to provide his divorced wife with food and clothing, keeping in view the norms of the society, which in other words means that the status of the husband has to be kept into account. So the needs of the divorced wife and her own status shall also be kept in consideration while providing for her. So neither of the parties shall be burdened beyond their capacity, as these verses say. So a mother shall not be harmed in any way by taking advantage of the fact that she is the mother of the child, nor the father be unduly pressurized in any way on the pretext that he is the father of the child. And if the father of the child is dead, of course that could be happening, his heirs will be responsible for all the above mentioned rights. وَعَلَى الْوَارِثِ مِثْلُ ذَلِكَ are the Quranic words that the heirs are responsible for this. Now, if through mutual consent and consultation, the estranged husband and wife decide to terminate the suckling period before 2 years, they can do so. This is something which can happen. And if the child's father, or in his absence, the heirs of the child, want to have the child suckled from some other lady instead of the mother. Remember, this is also an option, and this was something very common in Arabia of those times, that foster mothers would step in and they would take care of the suckling of the child. So the Quran says that if the father would like, a father, or in his absence, the heirs of the child would want the child to be suckled from some other lady instead of the mother, then they are authorized to do so, provided that what has been agreed with the mother regarding her maintenance is fully honored. So in this situation, if the mother is not suckling the child, remember, and some other woman has stepped in as the foster mother, but she's not doing so, in that case, it is essential for the father to provide for her during that suckling period, because he will have to maintain her, because it was her responsibility, and that responsibility is now being taken away from her. So in that case, she must be provided for this whole thing. So before I go on, because we still have some I would say tertiary issues related to this issue of divorce, but primarily we have completed the Quranic verses which relate to divorce. If you have any questions regarding what we have studied, please raise them now.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Shabana Ansari, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
डॉक्टर साहब, वैसे तो इसमें है कि हाउलाइनी कामिलीन के पूरे इसकी ये सकलिंग पीरियड जो है पूरे 2 साल है, लेकिन कुछ लोग जो है पता नहीं वो मैंने सुना हुआ है जो कहते हैं कि बेबी बॉय के लिए तो 2.5 साल और बेबी गर्ल के लिए 2 साल, तो ये कहाँ से मतलब चीज आ गई है, जबकि
This is absolutely baseless. I mean, this has no foundation. It is 2 years, whether the infant is a boy or a girl, regardless of the gender of the child, it is 2 years.
तो ये किसी रिवायत की बिना पे आई है लोगों में?
I'm not sure. I haven't come across any narrative which says so. And if you have anything in your mind or before you, let me see it. I haven't seen anything of this sort. But even if there is a narrative, it's totally against the Quran, or there could be some other details which that narrative might be having. Otherwise, the Quran, regardless of gender, is saying that the period of suckling, if it has to be completed, if the term has to be completed, it has to be 2 years.
जी, मैंने भी बहुत सुना हुआ है, लोगों से यूं प्रैक्टिस करते हुए देखा हुआ है, तो मैं इसीलिए पूछ रही थी कि अगर आपको कोई इल्म हो तो. ओके, थैंक यू.
Nothing in my knowledge.
Thank you. Imran, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Saleem. Just a quick question about the birth of a boy versus a girl. The aqiqah is something that was practiced by Arabs even before Islam, and they used to do it in a way where they would have the two, like sacrifices or qurbani for the boy, and for the girl it would be one. And Prophet continued it, but of course in our cultures that's the way it is continued. And some scholars say that it was just a sacrifice, it could be 1 and 1, but most of the scholars like two for the boy, one for the girl. But I want to know the wisdom, whichever, the law, the ruling you agree to that, why is it two for the boy or one for the girl?
Well, first of all, there's nothing in the Sharia which stipulates that a boy should, when a boy is born, you should be giving two goats for sacrifice. This was basically Arab culture of those times. The Arabs used to do this. They would feel more happy at the birth of a boy for some reason. I mean, of course, the reason was understandable because they would think that someone is born to them who will now be support for them in their land cultivation, in protecting them for security purposes. So because of the fact that the son would be doing these functions, so they would be more happy. So it's more of an Arab culture. And that culture is something which the Prophet respected, and he did so. I mean, we do know that. But as far as the Sharia is concerned, this distinction can be done away with at any time because it has nothing to do with any such thing. And also, times have changed drastically. I mean, the reason that you are happy for a boy is equally the same as you are happy for a girl. So, I mean, there is no restriction that if you should not reverse this thing, because, as I said, it's not. It does not belong to any religious directive. It's more of a cultural aspect and a cultural festivity. And in fact, today, if parents feel more happy at the birth of a girl, they can just reverse and give two goats for a girl and give one for a boy. I'm just for the sake of saying. Otherwise, as I said, this is not a directive of the Sharia. It is basically, you have to understand that the ritual of animal sacrifice that we do at the birth of a child is a ritual in which you are thanking the Almighty. It's an expression of gratitude from ourselves. And that gratitude is expressed through this animal sacrifice, and the meat of that animal is distributed among poor people and the underprivileged for this reason. So I think this is the essence. The rest is all culture. Whether you do one or two or five or seven, that is immaterial.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all the questions.
So I'm not going to go forward. So if we have any off-topic questions, we can take them as well.
Bismat Tirmizi Ahmed, please go ahead.
So, Dr. Saleem, the akika is not a must. You can celebrate in other ways also, or is it a must to sacrifice the goats? It's more of a cultural thing, then, right?
So first of all, the word akika was not approved by the Prophet. And when someone said that he would like to celebrate akika, he said, "Ana la uhibbul uquq." Because you see, the ancient custom of akika was that they would sacrifice a goat or an animal and then sprinkle the blood of that animal on the forehead of the infant, and they would think that this would protect that infant from evil spirits. So this is what happened in pre-Islamic times. So the Prophet said, well, if you have to do something, all that you can do is you can offer your gratitude by offering animal sacrifice, and that is all. So the important thing is that this akika itself, I mean, as long as it is confined to animal sacrifice, it is something that can be done. But again, that is not an obligation. You can have other practices, you can adopt other means of thanking the Almighty, because of the fact that this was something. I mean, when you spill the blood of an animal, it's like a token of your expression that today I'm sacrificing this animal, but tomorrow, if my own life is needed, I would be there as well. So it's like a pledge that you are giving the Almighty, and also at the same time expressing your gratitude at the birth of a newborn. So this has not been made an obligation. It's like something, if you would like to do, it's fine. If you don't do, it's okay. But it is something which is recommended. But in that case, as you said, that if you would like to express your gratitude through some other means, that is also something that can be done. But one thing that I can add here is that this ritual of animal sacrifice or akika, which is done at the birth of a newborn, what is added to it is that haircut or shaving the head of the infant. That has nothing to do with religion at all. I mean, this is something purely medical or hygienic, maybe that you would like to do, but it is not part of any religious custom.
Are you serious? Because all our lives, that's what we've heard, that the child's hair has to be shaved off, the babies,
So
because it was
that's
in
not
the
part of
womb.
religion. That is not part of
Oh,
religion at
wow.
all. That is something that
Oh.
you can do. You can abstain from doing it. You can, I mean, it could be medical reasons, because you see, if you shave off the head of the child at an early age, it is said that the hair get more healthier at the second time. So that could be a consideration. Other than that, it's not a religious requirement at all.
Wow. Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Shaban Ansari, please go ahead.
डॉक्टर साहब तो इस हकीकत में इतना तवातुर कैसे आ गया कि ये रस्म जो है इसको
There is
आमने
no such
सामने समझ
tawatur. I
लिया
think
गया
you'll find that
तवातुर की
tawatur in
तरफ
our subcontinent. I mean, yeah, we do understand this, that it takes place mostly in our subcontinent. Otherwise, the fact that you have to shave off your head is something which is absolutely alien to religion. And another reason could be because this is something which is practiced in two big countries like India and Pakistan, that we generally think that this is what's going on in other places as well.
वो जो इंडिया में बलि करना या वो वाली चीज को आप कह रहे हैं खून
No,
बहाना
I'm talking about shaving the head of the newborn and thinking that you have to sacrifice two goats for a boy and one goat for a girl. This has become
तो
such a
लेकिन
norm in these two countries.
लेकिन आया तो ये उधर ही से आया ना आप कह रहे हैं कि रस्म उनकी थी अरब्स की थी ये रस्म
Yes, the Arabs used to think that by sprinkling the blood of that animal, they would be protecting that newborn from evil spirits.
तो वही मैं पूछूं ना कि वो उधर तक कैसे आ
So,
गई मतलब बड़े सगीर में लोगों तक इंडिया पाकिस्तान में ये कैसे आ गई है
because you see, the Prophet said that if you want, you can sacrifice the animal. I mean, he did not stop. He said, well, if you would like to express your gratitude, don't call this aqiqah. So you see, the words of the Prophet are, Ana la uhibbul uquq. I don't like this word uquq or aqiqah. Yes, the remaining part of the hadith is that if you'd like to sacrifice an animal to thank God, then it is fine. So you see, this is how it started off. But one thing is that people thought that it had become obligatory, mandatory. So that is something which has to be done away. It's not a mandatory part. And secondly, they think that, as I said, shaving off the hair is part of that animal sacrifice. That has nothing to do with animal sacrifice. That's a cultural addition.
शुक्रिया बहुत शुक्रिया
Thank you. Shabnam, please go ahead.
सर मुझे मैरिटल रिलेशंस के बारे में ही थोड़ी सी कंफ्यूजन है कुरान पाक में 2-3 जगह मुझे आयात तो मुझे अब नंबर याद नहीं लेकिन यहाँ में से पढ़ते जा रहे हैं कि 2-3 जगह जहाँ पर भी आपस में इख्तलाफ का जिक्र हुआ है हस्बैंड वाइफ के तो अल्लाह कहता है कि ला जुनाह अलैकुम कि वो वाइफ कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर ले तो सुलह बेहतर है तो वाइफ कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर ले तो दोनों पे कोई गुनाह नहीं इसी तरह ये डिवोर्स में अगर ये बिल्कुल डिजायरेबल नहीं है कि हस्बैंड से कुछ ले उसको छोड़ते वक्त लेकिन अगर वो नहीं दे रहा तो वो तो भी दोनों पे तो वो ले ले वापस और दोनों पे कोई गुनाह नहीं है तो सर एक चीज को इस्लाम पसंद नहीं कर रहा और उसको ये राइट दे रहा है तो लोग तो फिर डेफिनेटली इसका एडवांटेज इसीलिए लेते हैं कि जब हमें कोई गुनाह नहीं है तो फिर हम क्यों छोड़ें जिसको छोड़ रहा है खुशी से तो नहीं छोड़ रहा तो सर इसको हम कैसे देखें
You see, I mean, you cannot engineer this. It's not like a reverse engineering that you can do. You see, normally when you gift assets or property to your wife, you do in a very friendly way. You are fond of your wife and you would like to protect the rights of your wife, and you would think that, well, if I pass away, there should be something in the hands of my wife. So it's not a planned activity. It's always done with love and affection that the husband would do this. But you see, because of the fact that in spite of what you plan, there could be a situation that arises in which you maybe need to get separated from the husband, or the wife would like or demand divorce, because that's an option that can arise in future. So God says that, well, if this is what is stopping the husband from giving divorce, and the wife also wants divorce, then because it was made, it was prohibited upon the husband to receive back any gifts at the time of divorce. But if this is what the situation is, that both want divorce, and simply the husband is not giving that divorce because he has gifted so much wealth and property and assets to the wife that he would think that by divorcing her, he would lose these assets. So in such an exceptional case, she can let go of these gifts. So this is like an exception that is being given or treated by the Quran.
Right,
Otherwise,
sir,
you see,
right sir ये होती तो बहुत मिसयूज है ये परमिशन जो है और सर यही हम उसमें भी यही देखेंगे कि जहाँ पे अल्लाह कह रहे हैं कि मतलब वाइफ अपनी कुछ राइट्स के ऊपर कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर ले तो दोनों पे कोई गुनाह नहीं मतलब लेदर नाउ
that is in the case of mayor. So the other area in which this is mentioned in the Quran is in the case of dower. That if the wife settles for a lower dower, then of course, I mean, if she settles for a certain amount and the husband is not in a position to pay that.
सर इट्स नॉट अ मैटर ऑफ डॉवर उसके राइट्स के वो हस्बैंड के साथ वो रहना चाहती है तो वो दूसरी वाइफ के पास जा रहा है इसको टाइम और बजट जो उसको जो अमाउंट दे रहा है उस पर वो कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर ले जो राइट्स हैं उसके
Now, this is not mentioned in the Quran anywhere. I mean, this is a option which is given to the wife, and anyone can have this option, but it's not mentioned in the Quran. As I said, the other area in which this la junaha alaykum comes, the mention comes, is in the case of dower. You can see
right
this in Surah Nisa. However,
right
as I said, if you're talking about misyar or if you're talking about other things,
so
it's like foregoing your rights.
right sir right sir right sir thank you sir thank you I get it thank you
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. We have a longer chat question, so bear with me. This one asks, why should we pray 5 times a day or do any of the 4 pillars of Islam if a person is following the commandment in Surah An-Nahl, they're quoting Ayah 90, which Allah says He orders justice and good conduct and giving help to relatives and forbids immorality and bad conduct and oppression.
Mhm.
And so on. And so, similarly, in a different verse in Surah Taha, Allah says that there is no God worthy of worship except for Him, so worship me alone and establish prayer for my remembrance. So, based off of these, why should we remember Allah those specific 5 times of those 5 times, specific 5 times in the days and in a specific way?
So you see, you have to understand this that God has given us a regimented form of religion in which He wants to follow certain laws because you see, human beings are prone to extremes. If you don't give laws in worship affairs and worship rituals, either a person will end up doing nothing at all, or he'll become so, so extremist in this regard that you'll find him forsaking this world and just ending up in a forest and living there and not thinking of his rights and duties. So you see, this one's relationship with God is something which is inherently found in us. We have this inclination to connect to our Creator in some way or the other, and if the right way is not informed of, then a person will end up either very superstitious, because you see that vacuum is still there. That vacuum to connect to some superior being is found in every one of us, and if directives are not given regarding that, so, as I said, it will result in extremes, and people will go to either devoting themselves all day long to various prayers, as we can see what has happened in history, or they will completely forget to do anything. So, in order to make sense of these things, the Almighty has, I think, stipulated a very fair and a very balanced amount of prayer. These 5 prayers, if they are taken at the face of it, they are basically an expression of our thanksgiving to God. We are thanking God when we are kneeling and prostrating before Him for the favors that He had given us, for the blessings that we enjoy, our parents, our surroundings, the eyes that we have, the food that we eat. That they are basically given to us by God. Yes, there are other reasons, but you see, He's the first cause. So, in order to make us appreciate the fact that we need to thank someone, this prayer is basically an expression of thanksgiving. And as I said, if no amount of prayer would have been stipulated by God and the decision would have been left to the discretion of human beings, then history bears witness such extremes have resulted. So I think it's very fair that an amount was given, and it's not just the prayer. We have also been ordained, or we've been asked to fast, for example, 30 days. It could have been 15, it could have been 40, it could have been any amount. But this is like God, who knows human nature. He knows that, well, 30 fasts in 365 days and 5 prayers in 24 hours, they are the best optimum way in which you can connect to God. So not only has He stipulated this amount, He has also stopped us from going beyond this amount. And if you go beyond this amount, uh, it would be regarded as optional. It would be regarded as your personal expression of thanksgiving. But this is like which is mandatory upon you. So I think there is wisdom in this.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Really quick question: is khula and or giving wife divorce or a wife giving divorce, is that the same thing?
So remember, khula is a word which has not been used anywhere in the Quran. It's just a construct which has been made by our jurists and scholars. The only word which the Quran uses is talaq and divorce. And the reason that our jurists call khula, they give this term khula, is that they would want to create a distinction between the divorce which is given by the husband and the divorce which is sought by the wife. So the divorce which is given by the husband is called talaq by them, and the divorce which is sought by the wife is called khula by them. But practically they amount to the same thing. I mean, basically the word which the Quran uses is divorce. So there is essentially no difference. The only thing is who is giving which sentence at which time.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Imran, please go ahead. And since we only have 10 minutes remaining and a few other questions, quite a few, but please try to keep your questions concise.
Thank you very much. Dr. Saleem, could you share with us or give us some reading material or sources where we can, read? Alhamdulillah, you have given very good explanations, and being here in the States, you hear from different scholars, Arabs and non-Arabs, and so a lot of these things are clarified, instead of what we get culturally from Pakistan and stuff. So that was very helpful. But I would love to know, if you could share with us some resources, some reading material, where to look out for explanations and such. Thank you.
Of what particular thing? Of divorce?
So in the Quran, when you read, and questions come, how to, because of course some people go and they read the tafsir, and sometimes they just are not really targeting questions that arise these days, and I think it's important that we ought to know, that we could read something ourselves, and something we can benefit from your experience and your reading experience in the past.
Well, I think because there are a lot of misconceptions about our social issues, two things that might benefit you. One of them is Ustad Ghamidi's book, Maqamat, which is also in English by the name of Selected Essays of Javed Ahmed Ghamidi, in which he has explained some of these issues like inheritance and divorce and mutual relationships between Muslims and between non-Muslims. So these are contemporary issues that he has dealt with. So that is one thing that might be of benefit to you. Another thing is a book that I have written, which is called Common Misconceptions About Islam, in which misconceptions related to the Quran, the Hadith, the Sunnah, all these affairs that we have been discussing, like divorce and, for example, mutual interaction and the sense of clothing, etc., they are discussed. They might be this might be useful for you. And other than that, as I said, that the best thing is that whenever a question comes up, if these sources are not enough, if you're not satisfied with the tafsir that you're looking for, it's always good to consult scholars that you trust.
You have a book, well, thank you very much. You have a book on Bible as well, selected verses. I mean, what does that focus on?
So that focuses on biblical verses which are in conformity with the Quran and which basically give the same message as the Quran, and which can be thought of as God's message, not in His own words, but in a different language. But it is so close to the Quran that you can you can find how God spoke to earlier prophets in similar way, in a more detailed way, maybe at some instances, and in a more you can say in a more detailed tone than He has done in the Quran.
Thank you very much, Jazakumullah.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Asif, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahab. So maybe I have missed out this part. When the waiting period for a woman, and if she's pregnant, and in the modern world, we know that sometimes the fatherhood of the child can be known earlier than that. Then the waiting period will be finished there and then, or still they have to wait for 4 months?
No, it's not 4 months. It's up to childbirth. If the lady is pregnant, then the waiting period, the Quran says, is until childbirth. So when the child will be born, yes.
Sorry. So if the child's fatherhood is known, then still have to wait till the...
Yes, even then, because you see, in that case, it would become very awkward that the lady is nurturing the child of a previous husband, and now she's getting married to a new husband. So in order to circumvent this awkward situation, the Quran said it is better that you complete the childbirth, although the father of the child is known. So it's not a question of the father not being known. It's a question of rearing that child in the house of a person that you're now getting married who has no relationship with the previous husband. So the Quran has given this opportunity to the wife that she can now take care of the child until he's born and then get married.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. How much alcohol is acceptable in a cold medicine?
As long as that alcohol is a solvent, which means that it is basically a solution in which the other chemicals are being housed, it's fine. And of course, the such medicines are basically expectorants. They are basically cough syrups, etc. As long as you're using them for medicinal purposes, it is fine. But if you start using them for other purposes, then of course that would be a misuse. You see, in all medicines, alcohol is used to the extent that is essential for that solvent to exist. So as long as this, as long as they are there, it's fine. But if you start using that expectorant or that syrup for other purposes like getting intoxicated, then that would be wrong.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. If a man pronounces divorce, even if his wife isn't around him, will this still count?
Well, it depends. If the wife has not received it, and how can it count? If the wife is not there to receive it, or maybe later on he has conveyed it, that would be another question. But if he just pronounced it, I mean, we will ask the husband that what was the problem with you? Why didn't you give it in front of her? So you see, this is like a situation that has developed, and it can only be commented upon when we have all the details. That why did this? I mean, this is out of the ordinary. Why would a person give divorce to someone who's not even there?
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Bismillah Tirmizi Ahmed, last question of the day. Please go ahead.
So Dr. Saleem, my question to you was, why is it that Islam is it said that it spread on the strength of the sword when all other religions as well did? Like Christianity, there were so many crusades. Hindus also fought wars. Why is it? Is it almost like gaslighting? Is there some mention in the Quran where it says that you can? Why is it so popular? This notion,
This
and why
notion
is
is so
everybody forgotten
popular.
about the? Yeah.
Yeah, because you see, after the departure of the Prophet, the Sahaba, they attacked the Persian and the Roman empires, the two greatest empires which existed in those times, and they conquered them. So that is why people think that Islam was spread by the sword. However, we have given a different interpretation of this, and if you would like to know about it, we've discussed it several times. That basically it was the mission of the Prophet Muhammad and of the previous prophets also in their own times, when people who are deliberately guilty of denying the truth, they are punished for this denial. So it was not that they were attacked for any expansionism policy or to conquer people for the sake of conquering them. It was basically a punishment given to the Roman and the Persian empires for deliberately denying a messenger of God, whom they were convinced of, and then they did not comply with it. So basically, it's like a punishment given to them, and that punishment was interpreted as if people were being, they were subjugated in the name of Islam. That was not the case, and I mean, this is how I can explain for the moment, because this requires a lot of details, and if you need those details, I have a publication on this subject. It is called "Playing God." Mistreating a divine practice. So this divine practice is mentioned in detail in the Quran, that messengers of God, when their immediate addressees who are in front of them, if their message reaches them and they are convinced of that message, but they still end up denying that message, then they are punished for this thing. So that is something which is specific to the era of the messengers of God only. It cannot happen later on. So if it happened in the times of Prophet Muhammad or right after him, it was because of this mission that he had done, and it was only completed after him by his companions. And as I said, if you want more details, you can look that book up.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all of the questions today. Inshallah, see you next week. And thank you a lot for all the clarifications on this very tough subject. And thanks to all the participants for coming and providing us with incredible questions. Thanks, everyone. And inshallah, see you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.